Hi, good morning, and I'm aware that we've gone live a little early today, but welcome, and this is the ZP vlog from Zimmer and Peacock. This becomes a vlog and podcast, and we do this every Sunday at 8 a.m. London time in the UK, and we'll essentially jump straight into it. So some of the news that we put up there this week, now we've been developing Julie for something like 7 to 8 years, and a good product can take that long to essentially mature. Now, Julie is this online database for the storage, analysis, and sharing of electrochemical data. And a lot of what's going on within Julie is actually AI driven. And so this week we just put out sort of a new graphic to really kind of lay out the power of Julie. And so there's a new graphic, and it talks about the different ways that Julie can process data or receive data, process data, and pass the data on to third parties. So we did do some discussion notes on Julie this week. Now, something else, if you really dig into graphene electrodes, what you will essentially find out is that they're really quite expensive. There's a vapor deposition type graphene electrode, and those are they're expensive to make, and therefore when they reach the market, they're fairly expensive. Now at Zimmer and Peacock, we actually have, I think, the only world's true sort of screen printed graphene electrode, and it really is worth taking a look at. There's a video on our website about it, and when you look at that video, you can see the real sort of shiny grey surface of the electrode next to one of our graphite electrodes, and that sort of shiny grey surface is reflecting the fact that this is really acting kind of more as a metal than a sort of metalloid. So now at Zimmer and Peacock, we've kind of turned even the fact that this graphene electrode is low cost from Zimmer and Peacock, we've turned it on its head even more so, and actually made it free as part of a 6-month subscription to Zimmer and Peacock. So we mentioned Julie it just previously, and now we're also saying that in fact we can make Julie free through, or rather we can make these graphene electrodes free through subscriptions to Julie. So there's a couple of good reasons for Julie there. Now, it's fair to say we have a sister company called Massive Sensors, and they, in my opinion, really are the only company I know of that has a true PCB, printed circuit board, gold electrode that genuinely works. And what I mean by that is you get a lot of companies, businesses, academics using PCBs as electrodes for biosensing. But really, once you start, using this gold, you find out that it's actually too fragile or too spongy, and in fact, it leads to what's called corrosion currents, and you can't really use an off-the-shelf PCB as a gold electrode for biosensing. And what these manufacturers do is they end up sort of thickening up the gold by doing extra plating. It just doesn't work. I think the gold essentially is too spongy. And once there's a little leak path down to the underlying seed layers, then that very rapidly accelerates the corrosion, and the electrode breaks down really quite quickly. So all I want to say now then is Massive Sensors makes a really good gold PCB, and what they've done now is, well, they've also put a silver chloride reference electrode in next to that gold PCB, so they've become very sort of classic, that they have a gold working electrode and a true sort of, or pseudo reference in silver chloride next to the gold PCB. So that's really kind of for interest, let's say. Now I just made the statement that Massive Sensors, our sister company, are the only ones who really can make a robust gold, and I think that is reflected in the data that they're able to obtain as well. So on the ZP website, we've put some cyclic voltammetry measured on a Massier Sensors gold PCB electrodes, and they've done it in 0.5 molar sulfuric acid. So 0.5 molar sulfuric acid's pretty acidic, and what they've shown is that actually you don't get this corrosion of the gold PCB. Often, if somebody does a CV on a gold PCB, especially at these higher voltages, when you look at their data, they're actually recorded data up to something like 2 volts. So that's really oxidizing in sulfuric acid, and they don't get this breakthrough and this corrosion of nickel that's underneath the electrode. So really well done to Massier Sensors for that, and thank you for them sharing the data, and we were able to essentially put it on our website. And so, it's definitely, if somebody's using PCBs as their sort of platform upon which they're going to make their biosensors, then you at ZP we definitely recommend their technology. It's nice that the world is opening up a lot more these days. So this week, Zimmer and Peacock, we were able to attend a conference called Biowales in London, where we were able to talk about Zimmer and Peacock and our technologies, and we were able to talk about ourselves in the context that one of our facilities is actually in South Wales, and so we're part of the kind of Welsh medtech cluster. So we did go to the conference and we were able to give a talk, and it was in person. So things have definitely opening up in the UK and in Europe. Now, some other sort of small news is a while back, Zimmer and Peacock acquired a purine sensor, and now we've actually registered it in the UK with the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency. So this sensor is going to go into some clinical trials pretty soon, and we're grateful for the collaborators for doing that. And as part of that, we also had to, as I say, register it, and so now it is officially registered with the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency. So well done to the ZP team in the UK who essentially took care of that. We're appreciative of it. So some other news from Zimmer and Peacock this week. We tend to use this sort of venue to really talk about our news. If you're more interested in technical updates, then we do a webinar every Thursday, 8 a.m. London time, which is for our members of our ZP Developer Zone. And there, we do a much more technical. But I just wanted to say that we've also, thanks to the ZP UK team, we've also registered with Warwick University, and we are offering internships to Warwick University, and we are getting some inquiries from the students there. I'd say that Warwick is actually a really excellent university. I've been impressed with the facilities. The campus is beautiful. It's just near our Coventry, literally a few steps away from our Coventry centre. But it is an excellent university, nice campus, and I think the students are of really good quality. Now, Zimmer and Peacock, we have a lot of screen printed electrodes, and people have been inquiring about whether we can do what's called mediated electrodes. So what we've done is we've developed a Prussian blue screen printed electrode. I think Prussian blue is good for sensing on carbon electrodes where you will otherwise maybe have used platinum. So it works well with things like hydrogen peroxide and oxidase enzymes. We've also expanded the menu to include methylene blue. Now methylene blue I feel is good at working with things like organic molecules and things like dehydrogenase enzymes. So I think it's got a good interaction with a enzyme cofactor called NAD+, NADH. So if you're using a dehydrogenase enzyme, then the methylene blue is a good choice. It's the same for Muldulla blue as well. We also have a Muldulla's blue mediated carbon electrodes. The nice thing about these is they are They are more expensive than a hyper-value carbon electrode, but in terms of screen printed electrodes, they're really not, they're still low cost. So we have Moldula's Blue, that's also pretty good for using with dehydrogenases. And then we have Ruthenium Purple, which is good, similar to Prussian Blue for oxidases, for hydrogen peroxide. It's probably good in general as an alternative to platinum. So you can sort of, rather than having a platinum electrode, you can have a carbon electrode with this Ruthenium Purple in it, and that's is a good material to try out rather than just straight platinum. So I think we will talk about that more in our ZP Developer Zone on Thursday, because it tends to be a bit more technical, and this is essentially more about news. So I think the last thing that we'll touch upon is we did have our normal ZP Developer Zone members webinar on Thursday. As I said earlier on, we do this at 8 AM every Thursday, and in there we sort of touch upon new questions that come in, technical questions. So this week we talked about a product that we had called Easy Flex, and this person wanted to understand the difference between open circuit potential and amperometry, and so we did cover that. We had another inquirer asking about gold electrodes, and in there I did discuss gold electrodes and I made a recommendation, but I also made the recommendation that I think people have to start thinking about using carbon rather than gold. And even in immunosensing now, I know it's possible to actually use carbon electrodes. I think the pricing the pricing of gold means that it's really going to be a problem in future using it for essentially low-cost biosensors. We also discussed phosphate sensing in that webinar. We talked about how the phosphate speciation changes a function of pH. As I say, it's quite technical, but we do have a webinar up on YouTube now about that. And then we also answered the question about the shape of the electrode, and we essentially said it doesn't really matter the shape. I think people put a lot of concern into the shapes of screen printed electrodes, but I generally don't think it's a big issue, and I discussed that in the webinar. So that really kind of covers all the news from Zimmer and Peacock. So if you look at Zimmer and Peacock for this week, we were at a conference. We were delighted to be meeting people sort of face to face. We've had a sort of mini product launch in terms of these mediators: Moldula Blue, Methylene, Prussian Blue, and Ruthenium Purple. We've obviously have our ZP Developer Zone, as we have every week. We're offering internships up to Warwick University. So if you have any questions, and if they're technical questions, don't miss our ZP Developer Zone on Thursday. Otherwise, I will say thank you very much. Wanted to keep it fairly short this week, but hope you're following along on our blog and podcast, on our vlog and podcast. If you have any questions, reach out to us, and if they're technical questions, you will always find them being answered in our Developer Zone. Okay, thanks very much. I appreciate it, and have a good